You're listening to the Alberta Conservationist Podcast. I'm Mark Hall, your host. This show is brought to you in partnership with the Alberta Professional Outfitters Society and Wild Origins Canada. Here we dive into inspiring conversations about hunter-supported wildlife conservation in Alberta, shining a spotlight as we go on the remarkable individuals driving these efforts. Get ready to explore the wild and discover the people making a difference in Alberta's conservation landscape. In Alberta last year, there was some changes made to the hunting regulation that changed the eligible age for youth to be able to start hunting, which aligned itself with most of the other provinces and territories in Canada. Interestingly enough, in Alberta, whenever there's changes made to hunting regulations and whatnot, there seems to blow up to some extent. People try to make things political with even the simplest little changes. And this was one of them. It was on the news. I remember seeing it, that this change was made. And generally what the narrative was, which I thought was pretty funny because I raised my kids in hunting from a very young age, is the narrative somehow was that, my goodness, kids in Alberta are allowed to hunt. Young kids are going to have firearms. And it was painted this picture like Lord of the Flies, like there was going to be like hordes of children in the deep dark forest with, and did all kinds of like ritualistic things or whatever. And it was like, yes, they're allowed, but they still have to go with their parents. Like, it was just a very funny kind of thing. And so when I met you folks in Edmonton last year and you were talking about hunting with your kids and all this kind of stuff, and you're just so, as a family, you were just so lit up by doing this. And as your kids got a little bit older, and I just thought, I want to make this episode about the parents' perspective on having kids, getting them into hunting, and what that journey has been like, why it means something to you, what you do as parents to put boundaries on things, teach your kids, and what comes out of it for your kids. Because I do think there's a lot of misconceptions. You've probably seen this right down to on social media where people are like, oh my gosh, this young hunter got a deer. That's child abuse. The parents should be turned in for taking your kid out to get a deer, and they learn how to get a deer and turn it into steaks and hamburgers is somehow. Anyways, it's a little weird out there sometimes. So I'm super excited. Zach and Jen Fraser, welcome to the Alberta Conservationist Podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
It's exciting. I mean, I think the thing that I loved talking to you guys last fall about this is just how bright you were and showing me pictures with your kids, talking about these experiences. Even just a little bit before the show, you were talking about your kids are playing around, recording their own podcasts or whatever. And we're like, we can put that guy out of business. We're better than that. So that's, if folks, if you see some new hosts next week, then the regulations change to allow podcast hosts to start at age 10. So they're going to be,
right.
They're going to be better than what we are. You started taking them out with you when you guys were going out hunting and bundled up or whatever. Is this like, hey, you got to come along? Tell us a little bit about that story as a family.
I didn't grow up hunting or spending time in nature like we do now. So this is something that Zach kind of brought to our family, and he did grow up that way. So we basically started right from the beginning. We would go out as a family, even bundled up as babies and 1 and 2, to just be out in nature, to observe animals, to celebrate maybe a buck or a moose or anything like that, just to bring the excitement and the value of nature and having those skills. So it's something that they don't know any different. It's how they've grown up.
Okay. I think that's a big part of it, right? Zach, what are some of your earliest memories of like getting a deer or a moose and the kids are with you, and what do you remember?
Well, thankfully, we don't remember all of the details because it's certainly much more romantic to remember it than it was during the moment. We sort of forget all about the crying that was there because there was cold fingers and cold toes. But yes, I mean, we certainly had them wrapped up and along for the ride and as much as you can. And I mean, when they're young, you try and include them in the highlights of the whole thing and kind of the celebration of an animal. But more importantly, I think even than the animals and harvesting them is, I mean, 99% of what you're doing is being part of nature and, learning where your place is and learning to kind of enjoy the things around you. And even if you didn't even see a squirrel that day, you're still kind of enjoying the weather and the trees and everything around you and the water. I mean, there's something a little bit magical about sitting by a river. Anybody that's ever done that, no matter whether you're from the East Coast or the West Coast or anywhere in between, can relate to that idea. So I think it's the most important part of introducing kids into hunting is to focus on nature, and hunting is kind of what we're doing to be there. And like I said, 99% of it is about the environment, and 1% is about the harvest. But the harvest is important too, because you're securing your food for the year, and you're getting it from a place that's not disturbed by the world.
Right, right. Yeah.
Most people who don't get to hunt or observe nature are buying their food, from a store, and that's fine. That's just the way that the world's going. But you have no control over anything that happened from start to finish, and when it lands on your plate. So it's nice to have some control, or at least as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Jen, is the outdoors when you're together as a family like as much as like a classroom? Like are the kids like, what's this and what's that? And hey, what are
Absolutely.
these little raisins on the ground?
We have a lot of conversation about tracks, about
Oh
poop,
yeah.
um, and just, identifying how to identify different animals and their habitats, what all of that looks like, things we can eat, things we don't eat, how to follow animal tracks, or how to understand where they're living and why, to observe, like, why do animals like to hang out near water? Why do they like to be maybe where the trees are a little more dense and it's not as easy for us to get through? And it's basically every trip to the bush, we're learning something. And it is so good for mental health as well. The kids spend so much time in nature, and if we're having an off day or something isn't going right, that's where we head. We head outside.
Yeah, yeah. Do you go to places where these things, the phones and tablets, don't work, or do they
Do.
not mind leaving them behind? Like, what's your rules around that when you go out?
We actually don't have a lot of screens in our home, or the kids don't have much access to that.
Beautiful.
So I mean, they do, though. It is a part of their lives, but it's not the main focal point. The main focal point is basically getting outside or things that we're doing around our own home, because we also focus on what happens field to table too. So they also help with gardening. They also help with food prep. They also like Netflix. So there's a balance. But getting
Just like
outside
the
is
rest of
our
us.
yeah. But that is our go-to. That's our lifestyle. That's who we are. They don't know any different. That's how we live. And then
Yeah.
Zach does
Okay.
a lot of things to make our trips very fun. We cook over a fire, or we're as a family, maybe we're gathering the things that we need to prepare lunch in the bush, and we've all had a hand in packing it, and we're setting up a little bush camp. Just something very simple, but super fun. Everybody gets to play a part in that. That's, I think, something that's really important about having kids involved at a young age, is making it super fun so that it's something that they want to do. That's not something that they have to do. And then instilling
Yeah.
that in a young age where it's something that they look forward to more so than perhaps a screen or something else that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's sage parental advice for whatever the activity is, right? Like, one, you're doing something together as a family. Two, there should be something fun and memorable associated, with it, and some learning opportunities, and all that kind of stuff as well. Maybe that's lost, in other families, other parts of our life. But I remember that. It's like the campfire. I kind of like smiled when you said that because I remember for my kids when I first started taking them out, it was all about the campfire. Literally like 10 minutes after you're out there, it's like, can we build a fire now? And I'm like, it's 10 after 10 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, can we build a fire now? So, same thing. Ice fishing was about looking down the hole to see what you could swim by. It wasn't about having your hook in the water. So, Zach, was there like growing up hunting, like you probably hunted, with your family or whatever, and it was kind of serious and, be quiet and sit here and stop moving and pick your feet up when you're walking and that sort of stuff. Did those experiences change who you were as a father, bringing your kids into hunting? Recognizing that wasn't a whole lot of fun when I was a kid, or it was, and I want to replicate that, or I want to stop that, from happening. What did you bring from your childhood?
That's a great question. There's definitely a readjustment of expectations
No.
when you become a parent and you're introducing children into anything, really, because you probably were in your 20s and you maybe hunted really hard and you took it pretty serious and you had great physical capability and now all of a sudden you're bringing this little person into the picture who is neither quiet nor has any stamina or attention span or any number of things. So it's definitely a challenge to sort of readjust what success looks like when you're bringing young people into the outdoors. But that's okay. It might look like an outing hunting squirrels for 20 minutes as opposed to, a deer hunting venture where you absolutely have to be quiet and otherwise you don't see anything. As a matter of fact, deer is like way down the list. We'll tackle that one at a later date.
Yeah.
We focus on squirrels, rough grouse, and we're starting to get into bears over a bait because it's easier to keep everybody engaged. And any parent knows that snacks are the key to keeping kids engaged. Fruit snacks, fruit snacks, fruit snacks.
Okay. Yeah. I remember talking to one mom one time, said she'd be in the hunting blind and she'd have to have like bring all these toys and snacks and and everything and kind of keep a little entertainment center going there while she sat in the blind as well. Are you seeing as your kids are getting exposed to this, getting excited by hunting, understanding it a little bit more? Do you see them talking to others about that, to their friends, explaining some things? Jen, what you're nodding, what are you kind of seeing, observing from the sidelines as a mom?
It is. They kind of wear it as a badge of honor, having the knowledge of the outdoors and having the opportunity to get to hunt or be in the bush or to spend that time with dad or also some family friends that come hunting. And luckily where we live, it is common among other peers who are also getting to go out. So they're having these conversations already about hunting practices or observations, things they've seen in nature, things they've done. They love to wear camo, and Ben took his bear skull to school and did show and tell and explained all about the different parts and aging and about sending the tooth off and how they would age the bear. And so it's really important, and it's really, really great to see the knowledge that they have gained already by spending time with Zach and some from me, but not a lot of those things. Is they're a sponge. They're interested. It's important to them, and they want to learn about it. And they are having those conversations. They are promoting it and why it's important and where their food comes from.
Yeah. Do you feel it would be more of a challenge, like if you lived in a big center where what you did as a family and, the stories your kids took to school was not the norm of other families and teachers and stuff? Do you think you could handle that, or are you just thankful that's just not not
Well,
in the cards for you to have to worry about that.
I am grateful for where we live, that we are removed from that, because our kids are not exposed to like the negatives or the negative talk about what we do. They are taught right from the beginning that responsibility, what our responsibilities are as hunters, the safety of hunting, our responsibility in conservation or being stewards of the land. Are taught it from a completely different aspect than what maybe some of the people who have negative views are coming from. They wouldn't understand that. I'm sure we will encounter it. We have some family members who aren't big on hunters and hunting, but they haven't had to. And myself, I'm grateful that I don't have to on a daily basis, but would be happy to defend our lifestyle. Absolutely.
What about if they had a friend that just wasn't part of their family, but they were super curious? How would you take someone else's kid out with you and just say, like, the boys want to have you come along, this is their friend, like, or would that be nerve-wracking for you? Like, how would something like that unfold? Or has that happened yet?
Well, we do have friends come over, and as long as we had permission from a parent, like Zach is the best person to take someone out and to teach his knowledge for safety first. He always goes to safety and responsibility. Like our boys know everything they need to at this age about safe handling of a firearm, safety around other people, safety out in the bush. And Zach has taught them all that. So he would be a better one to answer it, but absolutely he could take them out. And actually our boys are involved in butchering too, and they have been from quite a young age. That's a good place for me to step back, and I'll take the meat once it gets to the house, and he takes it the other half. So I think he could speak to that for sure.
Zach, have you taken any of the friends out?
We've had a few sessions where we had some friends over and everybody brought their bows, and we did an archery shoot in the shop, and that was really good. Especially, in this case, the friends were a little bit older and they had some more knowledge than our children did. So it kind of turned into a mentor role. Our children were kind of looking up to these other boys and who did a really great job of participating and teaching. And in some ways, that's more powerful tool than me being the main teacher. You can kind of just step back and maybe keep a few boundaries on the way that things are going, but let the other kids fulfill their role as well. And so
yeah, that's cool.
to answer the question, would we take other kids along for the experience? Of course, that is even better than just doing it ourselves. If somebody else can be there and be excited. Just this weekend past, we took some family friends and their kids who were right around the same age as ours and did a little trap line tour, and there was some animals out there, a couple lynx and a couple coyotes and some foxes, and everybody went out, and oh my gosh, it's better than Easter, better than Christmas when you find these critters laying there in the snow. And so that was a really fun experience, and not something that everybody gets to participate in either, because in Alberta we have registered fur management areas. So there's only, and you can only trap fur in those areas. So there's a fixed number of people who get to participate in trapping. I mean, there's other avenues too. You can do some trapping on private land as well, but the number of opportunities to participate are not endless. So it's nice to be able to include other people in those outdoor activities and have a fire.
Yeah,
Eat snacks. Lots of snacks.
When's the fire? This trapping's pretty cool. When can we build a fire?
Yeah, that's right.
It's so funny. I think if there's other parents listening, they're probably going, yeah, exactly. But those are the memories that you build, right? Like in 20, 30 years from now, like, that's going to be what your kids go back and identify with, and a feeling and wanting to recreate that and carry that on. And so if it's a campfire, it's a campfire. If it's a this, it's a this. If it's a that, it's a that. So, and again, I just like, these things should happen in families' lives in every aspect of it, like a family trip or, or the dinner table or, whatever. So do you think it's more evident in a family that hunts, like the importance of these rituals of being together? Because it's not like you go, the kids are in hockey and it's like you're going one city one weekend and you're going, like, it's like you're all doing it together. You don't go in four separate directions, when you go hunting. Is that important to you as a family, like hunting being just like that's a family unit time?
I think any family ritual is important, whether it be soccer as a family or hunting as a family. I don't know if I would say that hunting is more important than any other type of family ritual. It's just ours.
Yeah, yeah. And you do it consistently. For a ritual to be a ritual, it's got this rhythm, to it that you get used to as a family. Kind of switching gears to a different topic. So you've probably just seen this out in the general world. This whole idea of hunting exposes kids to the taking of an animal's life. Like, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, unless mom and dad are horrible hunters and they ever have to worry about it. But, I don't think that's the case in most Canadian hunting families. But it's a criticism. It's like you're exposing kids to something at this developmental age. They don't actually grasp the magnitude of it. Like they're not ready for it. It's not right. Jen, like, what's been your process or your experience in having to explain, or the kids to see, or is it difficult for the kids to process? Like, what's been your experience there with that part of hunting?
I think for us, we like to explain it. So we talk about where our food comes from, number one. And, it looks a little different for us because we are the ones doing the harvesting as opposed to taking food that someone else has harvested. And we also make sure that we give the thanks that, this animal gave up its life for us, for our nourishment, for our food. And we make sure that they understand the full cycle and the responsibility that goes with that, like with ethical hunting, and making sure that it's done properly and not excessively, and that it's done for the right reasons. And so that's basically how we explain what it looks like for us and when we do harvest an animal. I think it is very different than like we wouldn't allow them necessarily to play video games where you take lives for fun, but we will explain the difference between harvesting an animal that we have permission to harvest for our family, for our nourishment, and what that means. And I think that that's kind of important to the kids understand the difference of what's done for fun and what is done out of responsibility and like family traditions and things like that.
Right. So, like, in your mind, is that kind of like lay to rest the fears and the criticism that kids at an early age, if they're exposed to hunting, the death of an animal, that somehow they're going to become desensitized and they're just going to run around and think that, songbirds and the cat across the street and, like they're just going to become like infatuated with killing things? Do you think is it the opposite?
I think it's the opposite. I think okay. Yeah, I think it's the opposite. I think that teaching them the responsibility that goes with taking an animal's life teaches them the difference between knowing when it's okay and when it's not, and kind of ethically what their responsibility is when they're the ones pulling the trigger, or they're a part of, our family and we're the ones pulling the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we had an incident, a deer incident that happened this winter, and it was a very sad incident because we took a deer's life that we didn't intend to. We didn't eat it, and So they very much know the difference between like when you choose and you make that decision and you go forward with that and you harvest an animal as opposed to taking one that it wasn't meant to be taken. So big difference.
Just an accident. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean, I remember having to deal with some things like that, and the idea of, respect, and that
Yes.
sort of thing. We never leave the animal laying on the side of the road, load it up. We drive off
Yep.
into the woods somewhere, find a nice little spot, and then
Mhm.
you kind of do the whole back to nature, all the
Yeah.
other animals that, kind of like this is nothing that nature isn't equipped for. It's
Mhm.
kind of what
Mhm.
happens most of the time, but still, I guess embracing that ethic and the respect, for life, even in the situations of accidents.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's have you guys faced anything like that, like from some other parents or whatever, like said any of these types of things to you, or is that just like outside of your world too far?
I think I may have had a conversation with a family member about it at one point before they kind of understood how we go about explaining to the kids what is happening. But really, it's kind of outside of we haven't encountered anyone that's been a concern.
Okay, that's good. It's probably something that's needed in the world out there for other parents is folks like you and parents that maybe live in a city, live in a different environment that are actually very curious, very interested
Mhm.
in, we see the people's interest in having backyard chickens and like the
Mhm.
mini farm, like that's kind of a big movement, the sourdough gardens, all that kind of stuff. There is people out there that are curious about hunting because it fits into
Mhm.
that lifestyle. Like to have some kind of a, hi, Dad and Zach, I need some help here. I need, some advice. We want to explore this as a family. We have these questions or whatever. Maybe there's something there. Maybe somebody will be hear this show and go, yeah, I need someone like them to talk to. We need a helpline, or a
I'd be happy to
forum to
answer
discussion.
questions.
So, we could set up a Facebook group, right? Like just come and ask questions about how to get started hunting as a family. But yeah, I'm so excited for you at this stage because my kids are older now. 30 and 28. They're both married. Our first grandchild came along about a month ago. So hunting is very, very different now. It progresses. And, my son mostly hunted with me when he was quite young. My daughter would go out. It was usually like she just wanted a day, her and I. It's like, do you want to come hunting with dad? Is Curtis going? It's like, yeah, he wants to come. Nope, don't want to go. And then it's like, is Curtis coming? No, he's not going this weekend. Okay, I'll go with you. And it was just like, she didn't want him there. It was just her and I, a little pink snowsuit, little stuffed frog. And we were out in the woods hunting. We'd always, usually get a deer or something like that. And then she kind of like explored it a little bit and then was just kind of like, nah, this isn't my thing. And then she picked it up, later as a young woman. And now she's just like, her and her husband hunt and fill their freezer and stuff. So there was a little, ebb and flow. My son at a very young age started taking his friends out, like once they could go hunt on their own, like 18 or, whatever older. And his peer group had been together since they were in kindergarten. And you can go onto your hand and start listing off his friends on your hands that got into hunting because of him and us, like taking him out. They didn't come from hunting families, but they all hunt now. And, some of them, they bring their deer over and hang it up in our shop. And my son helps them, cut and wrap it and stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things in store for you guys
Well, that is
as you get older.
It's a fear of mine that this way of life and these skills and the joy that it brings just being in nature together as a family, seeing wildlife is going to be it's lost. Like I fear that it is fading away.
So the fear in that actually our ability to go hunting and the abundance of wildlife, that's a fear, or that they're going to lose interest in it when they get older?
That the skills and the excitement around it will be lost. It's not
Okay.
like
Okay.
Not that the habitat or the animals necessarily, that just it'll become something people used to do, not something that we still do. And all the joy and the fun that goes along with that will be lost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a concern, I think, as you know, and why, one of the beautiful things about folks like yourself, like you're involved in hunting, you're involved on the taking side, but you dedicate as much time, energy, resources, education to what it takes on the conservation side of things, whether it's meetings or, or projects or donating to something, but that's just seems to come hand in hand with the lifestyle as well. And I guess there's a good lesson there, right? Like to kids, like if you're going to do something here, you kind of got to be ready to put in on the back end as well.
Absolutely. And Zach spends a lot of time in the bush, and he comes out with lots of valuable information for the things that are happening there that most people are not seeing, and it's information that we need going forward, things that most people don't see that are important to conservation and what is happening and habitats and such.
Well, you guys probably, you're probably not there quite yet, but I remember when the age comes in school for the science fairs, it's like our projects it's like we had a GPS unit and we went out in the field and we ran these transects, and every time we hit a set of deer tracks or whatever, we GPS the point and then we put them all on a map, and that's our data, and we make these inferences from it, and this was a conclusion about what deer were doing in this area. Like that was my kid's science projects, and it was so fun because it's like you're like, this isn't a volcano, like it's like, this is fun, we're gonna go out in the woods and look for some deer tracks. I'm into helping with this project. So yeah, I think that'll be a mark where it kind of shows you like the passion that's growing in your kids. And I think you're probably you're gonna see that. Of course, they're gonna hit the age going like, hey, we should buy these new geese decoys. And you're like, they're $900. Yeah, but they're really good. The reviews are, and you're like, geez. Thought hockey was expensive.
There's a lot to be observed and learned by being on the ground out there. I have a forestry background, which is where Dr. Hannah and I met is in college. You learn a lot going through school in forestry and working in the industry, but there's also a lot that's not completely known until by the forest industry, until you're out there and observing how the wildlife is using the disturbed forest. Here's an example. This fall, we kind of pinpointed a group of moose in this retention patch in the middle of a cut block. So a retention patch is just a chunk of bush that's left in the middle of this clear cut for the purposes of wildlife. And I had some clients in there. We were hunting these moose for about 4 days, trying to outsmart this one bull that was in there and had a couple cows. And the shape of the retention patch was extremely effective for these moose to come out to the edge, browse, and then return back into the heavier cover without ever being more than 20 steps away from security. And the shape of this retention patch was kind of like a star. So it had a big chunk in the middle and then some fingers coming out on the edges. And I watched these moose for 4 days, and there's all different sizes and shapes of retention patches out there, but none had I ever seen that were so effectively used by animals. So, I've got some friends who are in charge of layout for certain forestry companies up here, and I kind of brought this up to them, and I said, when you're planning for animal retention patches in the future, this is what I saw in this circumstance, and it was used exceptionally well by these animals. And two of the guys said, well, we've never actually designed them like that. Usually we just do a circle or something, and the only problem with a circle is that there's less surface area for these animals to venture out and then come back into safety. So that's not something that you can necessarily learn in school. That's something that has to be observed by being out there. And another example would be, this year we've had a massive snow load here. We've had 3 feet of snow, and the deer are having a really hard time. I mean, the snow level is clear up to their shoulders, and within a 20-minute radius of home, there's a lot of different forest types, and we manage for that. As all the mills and the forest planners around here, where the goal is to have different forest types. But under extreme conditions like this year, there's a very narrow set of parameters that those deer are comfortable in. And so these, big patches of spruce are where the deer are all congregated right now for thermal cover and to be able to paw at their food. And you would think that on this giant landscape that we have, that there would be deer everywhere, but when we got 3 feet of snow, they're really in these little tiny pockets, which are very, very important. If they didn't have those pockets, they wouldn't have a place to go under extreme circumstances like this. So being out there on the landscape and being able to see these things is very important. And in understanding how this forest type plays into the life of that animal. And if we didn't understand these types of things and their importance, then we wouldn't have healthy herds of animals to be able to enjoy. Conservation and observing what's going on out there is a huge part of being a hunter or an outdoors person, so that you can enjoy these things for years down the road.
Yeah. Now are these little things that you can kind of, expose the boys to with very simple little questions, like a little connection between A and B, not super highly technical, kind of things yet, but are you finding you can kind of talk about those little things and maybe they see it, somewhere else? Because Jen, you talked, early on about kind of talking about different habitat types and stuff. Are you able to make those little connections between something we're seeing something that's important to wildlife? What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The boys take in that information and we do point it out. Zach, of course, has more knowledge than I do, but even when we're out cross-country skiing or snowshoeing, I accidentally skied up upon a moose that was bedded down in a really cozy, comfy spot. So we have conversations about that on a fairly regular basis. And there was such a drought this fall. There were abundance of animals coming to our pond, and we talked about why that is and why that's important to have these places where animals of all shapes and sizes can come, because their habitats are changing. Our world is changing, our environment, our weather patterns. So these are all things that we do have discussions on. And it's things that I want them to learn and that they need to learn if they're going to be outdoorsmen, if they're going to enjoy this now and in their teens and as an adult, they're going to need to understand how they can help or what they need to watch for or what's important for this kind of lifestyle.
It's hard to be a conservationist if you can't connect the dots with all of the things that the animals need on the landscape, and recognizing what does well for them and what is not doing well for them.
Yeah, definitely, great points, and especially as obvious things, even to young kids change, like depth of snow, cold weather, rain, droughts, fairly big things, but super critical things, to use that as a teaching moment to connect, A and B. And sometimes that helps you out while you're hunting. A, B, and C all come together and, ta-da. And there's the lesson, especially if they can recognize that you pulled all these pieces and information together, while hunting, and that's where a lot of it all comes together. Now, this is an interesting one. I want to get your thoughts on. You've probably seen those stories from Alaska. I know they do one in the Yukon where they actually have hunting programs in the schools. So years ago, on one of my other podcasts, I had a fella from Whitehorse, and there's a program in the schools up there where the project or the program culminates in a winter bison hunt. So the camps, the wall tents, the stoves, snowmobiles, a group of adults that go out and they do a bison hunt. Some years they get a bison, other years, they don't. There's hunting's hunting, but it's right in the school. And I remember about a year ago seeing a story out of Alaska where it was like the hunters brought the moose back into town and put it on a dolly, and they literally wheeled it into the school. And it was like, okay, put a tarp out. And then the kids were taught how to butcher the moose and break it down into the different parts. That seems to be like a northern thing, like a northern Canada, the far north thing. Do you think that's something farther south? Like we should embrace that in Canada in our school system?
Absolutely. I think that we could stand to teach our children and other children where their food is coming from and what it looks like and what goes into it. It's not just, heading out into the bush and you come back with an animal. Like there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of safety, there's a lot of skill that's needed. And then what happens after? What happens after you've harvested this animal? And what has to happen next before it's a burger? There's a lot of things. And coming from a background where I didn't have anybody to expose me to that, and I didn't learn about this until I met Zach, it would be really great if there was an opportunity for those kids who might not have other exposure like you were talking about earlier, like your son and his friends, and like, would we take other children out? Because there might be other children who could really benefit from that and have something be sparked inside of them and make connections as to like, where does our food come from and why is it important and how can I be a part of that? And especially with so many things going on in the world to do with our food, I think that having it be a school program right along with conservation and like ecology and like all of those things, they just all go hand in hand.
Yeah, it would be pretty exciting, depending, of course, as like where you are and what the school district is. It could be a little bit of a challenge, but definitely in more rural communities in Canada, that would be probably a pretty amazing and highly appreciated program if we could get that into the school. Kind of final thoughts, for both of you looking forward. Beyond hunting and what you can see at the boys' age right now, do you think the lifestyle that they're involved in, particularly growing up with you and hunting and, all the things that we've talked about, do you feel they're going to be better equipped for the world? Like, even if it's not following it through hunting, what do you see that they can take from hunting that they might not get somewhere else? But that's going to be a beneficial way of like a skill, a mindset, a way of looking at the world, like whatever it is, like, is it transferable in building your character as a person later in life? Like what's your kind of final thoughts there? Jen, what are you thinking?
Yes. I think that it teaches you patience and perseverance, teaches you skills that you're learning by being on the land or harvesting or hunting. It teaches you responsibility. It teaches you to recognize that there is so much more that is bigger than what you are, and to have the respect for it, to look at the world through a lens of awe, like when you're in nature, you can enjoy the sunrises, you can enjoy the sunset, you can enjoy the way the animals move and how majestic they look. You can appreciate all of those things. And you can also learn how to be resilient and you could go out 30 times and come back empty-handed every single time. And all of that sets you up. It teaches you so many skills that you can transfer to many aspects of life.
Yeah, that's yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of transferable skills there, just especially when your kids are growing up in a day and age where everything is so instant.
Mm-hmm.
It's instant gratification. Yeah. If you want something, you can get it very quickly. Sometimes the Amazon parcel shows up and you haven't even ordered it yet, and you're like, how did they do that? Right? Like, I thought about it, and it was like it showed up. The hunting world is not like that. It's been unchanged for eons, and it tests us in a whole bunch of ways. But I definitely agree. Persistence, if you want something, and impatience is two very good virtues that maybe are
Absolutely.
missing in a lot of people today. Zach, what are your thoughts looking forward? How do you see your boys being positioned later in life because of how you're raising them?
Well, definitely, I second everything that Jen just said, and responsibility for your actions, I think, is a very valuable lesson that comes out of being part of nature. You can put in the work and be rewarded, or you can not put in the work and you're going to reap what you sow. There's nobody, if you're impatient and noisy, it's very unlikely that you're going to have a successful outing as far as harvesting something. And those are real consequences. I think maybe we're a little shy on what's the key phrase now, real world consequences, I guess,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I think that there's a bit of a disconnect today between um, not doing something and actually paying the real price of not doing it. So takeaways from the lifestyle, boy, I mean the list is long, but resilience is definitely one of them. There's nothing that is coming for free, so that's important. Yeah, Mark, what are some of the main issues that we're facing as a hunting culture, I guess, with getting buy-in from parents and young people, and sort of sticking up for what we want to teach our children and going into the future. Where's the fight? What are some of the challenges that we're up against in today's society?
When I think it comes to hunting in this lifestyle, the number one thing that probably precipitates everything that becomes controversial or a problem or something we lose in hunting is society's understanding, perceptions, and beliefs about who we are as human beings. So we are painted, with a narrative that other people adopt. We're these terrible people. We enjoy taking animals' lives. We're disrespectful. Like there's just this whole thing. I mean, even if you just look at films, kids' cartoons, the hunter is always the villain, right? Like it goes all the way back to Disney and Bambi. And Bambi was actually written by an author from Austria, I believe, and before that, it was strictly built as an anti-hunting tool to influence how young kids and parents saw, hunters through, all of these different, kids' cartoons and stuff. The hunters never doing good things for people and for others is always the bad person. So the number one issue I think we face is character assassination. So being able to be of good character, to be an upstanding person in your community and be known for that, and also be known that you're a hunter. You're not hiding it. It's known that you are, and you're associating these other good qualities as a person in the community being correlated with also being a hunter, and respecting the fact that that is 365 24/7, right? Everything you do outside of hunting, if people know, your boys go hunting with you on the weekend and they're at a sports tournament, they're in school doing like everything, like is who they are as people are going to come back and be associated. But that's the opportunity to break that down, for like people to be like, no, those are good people. That's a good family. Hang on a second. My friend, Zach, he goes hunting with his mom and dad, and he helps me with my homework, or he fixed my bike for me, or he loaned me his football, or or whatever. That to me is the future. I mean, the wildlife side of things, habitat, populations, science, we can fix those things. We can deal with those things. But whether we have access to this lifestyle, this food resource that is generated from this habitat, I think will come down to the future of, does the peer group around your boys, are they perceived as being good, of good character, of good quality people? And that will reflect well in society. And I think that's our future. That's the biggest path for us to work on.
That's interesting. The stigma is almost a little funny because where character building and respect are kind of the fundamental pillars that we're working on with our children, and the activities that we're doing. And the fact that maybe the public perception is the opposite is interesting, because I think we're probably putting as much or more focus on character building in our children through the outdoors as most people would. It's a top priority, is respect and character building, because those the outdoors and those traits, they kind of go hand in hand. You really can't participate in one without the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are sometimes in this environment where you have to assess risks, make decisions, be the person that takes the bull by the horns and leads a group of people, be responsible, for their safety, their welfare, their well-being, like you become a leader. And hunting is definitely an arena that can make it, like, if you're passive and you're not a leader, you're not going to do too well, especially when you try to go out and hunt by yourself or take someone else. And that really sticks in my mind when I interviewed this fella from Whitehorse that was involved with the kids. And one of the things that the community said about this bison hunting program is the kids that go through the program, and they can go through it in successive years. So they'll have kids that may have been in the program, been on a bison hunt for 3 years, and somebody that's just a kid that's just coming into the program, maybe a difference of, grade 11 to grade 8 or 9 or something like that. The number one thing that everybody in the community says outside of that program and outside of the bison hunt, the kids that go through that program become leaders in their community beyond hunting. Like, they're leaders in stepping up and helping out and doing all types of things. And yeah, I think that really aligns with what you've both said about, character building comes from this lifestyle.
I think that's wonderful, and I can certainly see how the kids would be perceived that way, because when you're in that environment, that you're constantly faced with challenges. There's nobody that's really sheltering you from the real world consequences.
Yep.
So, there was a book, an audio book that I listened to called Hunt, Gather, Parent. And it just on the path of kind of trying to become a better parent and learn our different children a little bit better. But one of the main concepts of that book was the author, she sort of analyzed hunter-gatherer societies from 3 different regions of the world, and how children coming out of those societies were very self-confident and self-sufficient. And one of the main concepts of the book was just how parents integrated their children to work towards a common goal that the family had, as opposed to, it's hard because as a parent, sometimes it's easier just to say, go watch TV while I make supper, or just go on the iPad, or so I can have some quiet to finish this email, or whatever it happens to be. And it's not easy to integrate them into everything that we do, but the outdoors is a great place to be able to do that, and to work towards a common goal, making everybody a little stronger as a team.
Wow, that's great. That's a great philosophy. I'll have to look that book up. Maybe I'll drop the link in the show notes, because that might catch some parents' attention that are listening to this episode.
Definitely.
I love your philosophy as parents, and raising your boys, and just wanting them to be part of this lifestyle, and give them everything that it's in your heart, around understanding and caring for the outdoors and participating in the outdoors. I think that's a philosophical difference between being a spectator and actually participating in the outdoors. Hunting is participating, it's being part of. And I do believe we gain so much more benefits in understanding what wildlife need to survive as a species by being a participant that you'll just never gain from being a spectator. And I think your boys are going to be participants. And, at some point, I think just based on the ethos of both of you, they will carry on this torch and they'll champion wildlife, through the rest of their life. I can just sense it that, this is their path as well. And one of the great things about it is they do reach an age where they're bigger and stronger than you. Last winter, I got a deer, and for the first time in my entire life of an animal I ever harvested, I did not take it out of the bush. My son came into the GPS point with the little toboggan that we usually use for ice fishing or whatever, and he took the old man's deer out, and I was like, first time. It was a little sad, but it was like I did all this work, and it's the responsibility to get your animal out and home and processed, and he did that part of it for me. There's some changes to come yet for you guys.
There's some great joy in realizing your investment, I suppose. You put a lot of time and energy and love into building something for many years, and then when it's able to walk or fly on its own, it's a little bit bittersweet, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, you got a lifetime ahead of you doing lots of cool stuff, learning, growing experiences, all these family memories, and you get to look forward to more cool science projects about comparing the size of moose poops as opposed to as opposed to what does baking soda and vinegar do and red dye and a paper mache volcano. You're not gonna have to live through that. I'm pretty sure. So you might have to live with the oh my God, is this real animal poop? And it's like, yeah, it is. And it's like, we're not sure if that's allowed in the science fair rules. We're going to have to look it up. So might be some different consequences, but it's exciting. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing, opening up and sharing your family and how you're trying to raise your family. I commend you, for doing that. When I circle right back to the start of the show, was controversy. There was a negative narrative around some of the changes to embrace young people getting into hunting in Alberta. I think the goal was here is that people could have a look into your world as two parents and maybe see that what they saw in the news or what they read or what people were saying about hunting regulations in Alberta that create these opportunities for young people is not warranted. It's not who parents are. It's not who kids are. And there's something there of value to society and to the province of Alberta. So congratulations to both of you. Love what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Mark. Just to touch on that one more time, I think that more opportunities. I'm so fond of the change that just got made this spring to let kids at the age of 10 as opposed to 12 start hunting, but we need more opportunities to grow and cultivate these interests in young people, not less. So what a wonderful change. And when I have that conversation with some people, they say, well, what's the benefit of kids being able to hunt earlier? One of the benefits is that as our species become more and more coveted, and I like to use moose as an example. I mean, most zones in Alberta, you can draw at a priority 5 to 8 or maybe even 9. So you're essentially looking at drawing a moose tag maybe every 10-year period of your life. But if your children can start applying on those draws at the age of 10, then there's a good chance that you will get to hunt one of those species together before your kids leave homes. What a wonderful change. I mean, if you're starting at 12 and you're in a zone that's a priority 8, I mean, your kid's going to be in his early 20s when they draw a moose for the first time, and probably off at college. You may or may not be able to actually hunt together or capitalize on that opportunity that comes your way. Whereas if you could start a little bit earlier, building priority and teaching along the way, then you may get to use that opportunity to its fullest.
Well, those are some really good points. Yeah, I mean, it's something I never had to, worry too much about here. Raising my kids in British Columbia was I just kind of could go out every year. You could just buy an elk tag, like we had lots of those opportunities, but not everywhere structured like that. And definitely, our moose is on a draw system as well. So yeah, though that's just something I never thought about when you talk about these opportunities together, and how frequently are you going to be able to get to do those together as a family. So definitely more opportunities for kids, like even things like, the waterfowl day or the family fishing weekend or these sorts of things. People think, like what's one day, kind of thing. And something like the opportunity to take your youth out into a field and go duck hunting just for youths the week before the season opens, when all the serious folks are out there and, dogs and blinds and big decoy setups and stuff, that can make the difference of, how fun it is, for a kid that's saying like, I love ducks and this is my passion and I want to harvest ducks and I want to learn about ducks and I want to understand duck habitat. That, maybe a day or a week that's just set aside for the youth can make the difference in the future of the people that stand up for these places and these animals for society.
Totally. It's a very influential age where they're on the fence, they could be tipped one way by a positive experience or tipped the other way by a negative experience. So the more positives that we can build into the early years, we're going to have better results come out the other end.
Absolutely. So hopefully you've reached some folks that maybe tuned in and listened or watched this episode that, aren't coming from the lifestyle that you are, maybe changed their minds, maybe got them thinking about a few things so that next time something comes along and hits the news in the province of Alberta about something in hunting regulations for youth, some folks are like, oh no, I understand this a bit better now. It's not that we're perpetuating, like I said at the beginning, Lord of the Flies happening out there in the Alberta woods. There's a better understanding and appreciation for folks like yourself and your family. So Zach, Jen, thanks so much for your time. I love talking to you guys. Hopefully we can catch up in the near future together at another event. So good luck with the family outings and patience and fruit sticks.
Fruit snacks.
That's fruit snacks. It all boils down to that, folks. It's just like patience and fruit snacks. Yep. So
hey, and thank you, Mark, because you're kind of like you're like a modern day warrior for the outdoors person, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I'm just happy to do it. I'm just, so inspired by folks like yourself. I just want your story to be shared larger and wider because I think it's important. It's important that people see who you were, who your family is, and bit by bit kind of change that narrative that hunters are just average good people doing the best they can and raising good young people. So who doesn't want that in this day and age? Thanks for listening, folks, and we will catch you in the next episode.
I want to tell you how I like nature, and I just really like it because it's so beautiful. And unlike in the cities, the air's fresh, the animals are free to roam wherever they want. They don't get ran over. I love that, and it's just so beautiful. Like the sun rises, the sun sets. You can watch the moon at night, and it's just so beautiful. All the trees, and sometimes in the winter when I look out the window and there's snow on the trees, it's so beautiful with the sun shining through them. That's why I like living here, right in the middle of nowhere. And I love hunting. It's one of my favorite things to do. I've hunted everything with my dad, except for elk and moose. I've hunted deer, I've hunted bears, chickens, squirrels. No turkeys. We don't live in that spot where we can kill turkeys. when you take something's life away, you need to be grateful for it. You need to be grateful that it gave you its life so that we can live. It's just so cool. It's just so cool how you can find the sheds. Like, it is just so cool. And the animals, they're giving their life to you so they can live. You have to be thankful for that. Really thankful. Like, I'm this strong because of animals giving their life to me. And it's just, you have to be thankful for it. It's not every day that you're going to just go out into the woods and kill something. You have to wait for the biggest one. You have to wait until you're comfortable, you have a good shot so it doesn't suffer. You never want anything to suffer. And you just want to kill it instantly. And you don't want to take too much either. It's just, I love nature. See ya.
Hello. Today we'll be talking about um a story that I wasn't there for, but my dad has told me, and I like it. So, and he's told some of the other people that have came. So, he was on a river, and then he saw a deer swimming across, but he thought that the deer was in trouble. So he drove up to it and picked it up, put it in his boat. And the deer was scared what Dad was going to do, so it started using its hooves, swinging its head, just trying to get out. And Dad, he was trying to hold the deer still, so by the end of that he had a cutlet and a cut shirt. So he learned a lesson from that. Never, ever help a deer. But by the end, he asked for help from his uncle. But he was so in laughter that he literally peed his pants. I was trying to say a bad word and a good word mixed together. Peed and pissed. Anyway, that's my story.